Imagine a man who wept because conquering 2 million square miles was not enough for him. The glory hunter. Alexander the Great cared only for one thing: conquering the world. He threw his army into battle without fear of defeat, as if he were immortal. And why wouldn't he think that? The man was on a victory spree for 10 years. His men, tired and yearning to return home to enjoy the luxuries they'd won, found their king caring for no riches. He didn't even care much for ruling. It was all about conquering. Everything went well for him until he hit a wall in India. Alexander lost many men while fighting Porus in his most challenging battle. He was reportedly wounded himself, and his horse died in battle. Despite this, he kept pushing his men. But across the river was another vast Indian army, refreshed and ready, while his own men were tired and weak. They begged Alexander to call it a day, call it a campaign, or call it an empire. But for once, Mr. wouldn't listen. He was forced to comply, marking the beginning of the end for him. Infamous for his drinking habit, Alexander went overboard one night and fell seriously ill. His opportunist generals quickly gathered to see their king and asked, "To whom shall his vast empire belong after his death?" Alexander replied, "To the strongest." This triggered a war between his generals, lasting almost 50 years, and the Macedonian Empire was broken into pieces before it even fully formed. But anyways, it was never about Macedonia in the first place. For Alexander, it was only about Alexander. He became paralyzed and was pronounced dead by physicians. Greek historians wrote that Alexander's body didn't decompose for 6 days after his death, which proved that the warrior king was indeed a god. However, they failed to realize he wasn't dead to begin with. Modern-day scientists believe Alexander suffered from a neurological disorder, which put him in a coma. This takes us to the medieval era,
which was mainly famous for the Crusaders. However, they got overshadowed by Genghis Khan, who emerged as the beast of the East. He managed to conquer twice as much land as Alexander and was determined to bring the whole world under one sword. Unlike Alexander, who saw himself as a god or a messiah, Genghis Khan knew he was a tyrant and openly boasted about it, stating, "The greatest happiness is to scatter your enemy, to drive him before you, to see his cities reduced to ashes, to see those who love him shrouded in tears, and to gather into your bosom his wives and daughters." There are several accounts of his death. Rashid ul-Din writes that he fell victim to the bubonic plague, while Marco Polo, the famous Italian traveler, writes that he was shot on horseback and succumbed to his wounds a few days later. Another report suggests he was fatally castrated by a princess of the Western Shia Empire, whom he had forcibly kept as a concubine. The reason why his death is not well documented, as with other conquerors, is because it was meant to be a secret. Before dying, Khan instructed his family and followers to keep his death a secret, as it occurred at the worst possible time. The Mongols were at the vital stage of their 20-year long-desired conquest of the Western Shia Empire. Fast-forwarding 5 centuries, perhaps the greatest conqueror to live was Napoleon Bonaparte. The transition from swords and spears to artillery had taken place, and Napoleon was an undisputed genius in the art of war. Although he became emperor in the name of defending revolutionary France, one can see his ambitions carried him far beyond. His personality was probably even more bizarre than the rest of the great conquerors. Napoleon considered himself an artist of war, reportedly saying, "I love power, but it is as an artist that I love it." To him, the battlefield was a painting, and he was an artist drawing it. His power of concentration was enormous, as was his memory for detail and facts. Once, on a campaign in 1805, one of his subordinates couldn't locate his division, and while his aides searched through maps and papers, the emperor informed the officer of his unit's present location for the next 3 nights, the status and resume of the unit's strength, as well as the subordinate's military record. All of this out of an army with 7 corps, a total of 200,000 men, with all the units on the move. It was all pictured in his head. He swept victories throughout parts of Europe and the Mediterranean region, with his forces moving as swiftly as the wind, only louder. However, the stakes got higher and higher, the death toll mounted, and the battles became even more blood-soaked. Eventually, he was defeated at the Battle of Waterloo in 1815 and captured by the British forces. He was not sentenced to death, since the British did not want him to die as a martyr. Instead, they house arrested him with a few of his followers in a rotten bungalow. He lived the rest of his life in constant denial of his circumstances. When he held a dinner party, men were expected to wear military dress, and women appeared in evening gowns and gems. He wanted to feel like he was still ruling. Years of isolation and loneliness took a toll on him, and he finally died on the 5th of May 1821. Making his last confession, expressing everything dear to him: his country, his military career, and his wife Josephine. Then there stands a man whose thirst for conquest knew no bounds: Julius Caesar, a name whispered in awe and fear alike, echoing the tales of Alexander, Genghis Khan, and Napoleon. His tale begins amidst the turmoil of the Roman Republic, where Caesar emerged as a beacon of ambition, a glory hunter in the truest sense. Like Alexander before him, he cast his gaze upon distant lands, yearning not just for dominion, but for the very world itself. With the fervor of a zealot, Caesar led his legions into battle, heedless of defeat, for he saw himself as immortal, destined for greatness beyond measure. His victories stretched far and wide, painting the map with the colors of Roman conquest. Yet, as with Alexander's campaign in India, Caesar too faced his Waterloo. Amidst the rivers of Gaul and the plains of Italy, he encountered his own walls, walls of resistance, of betrayal, of treachery. But Caesar was no stranger to adversity. Like Genghis Khan, he understood the brutal calculus of power, embracing the role of tyrant with a grim determination. His enemies trembled, their cities reduced to ashes, their loved ones shrouded in tears. Yet, as the shadows of conspiracy closed in, Caesar's downfall seemed inevitable. The Ides of March became a dagger in the heart of Rome, a testament to the fragility of power and the capriciousness of fate. This marked the end of the great four conquerors. Someone among them died due to sudden illness. An arrow took the better of Genghis Khan, while the artist died in captivity. And in the end, Caesar's legacy endured. Although the four great conquerors left this world in different circumstances, they had but one thing in common: they all died desiring for more.